quite easy to be a leader when things are going well. Like any team, like any board, you're only as good as your weakest link. And I'll say his name. And his way was about winning today. I think I've learned more about bad leadership and what I've learned through seeing bad leadership.
Welcome to the Lunch at Work podcast, where we talk to experts about how to make workplaces better.
Today, ex-professional cricketer Neil MacLaurin talks to us about what he's learned on the field and how that helps him today in the boardroom. For those who don't know you very well, can you give us a little brief introduction, who you are and kind of how you got to where you are today?
I guess my potted history, left school, didn't do brilliantly academically because sport was my life. So I bluffed my way through my academic side of school. Played professional cricket for 4 years at Middlesex, which was a great honour. So straight from school, I sort of treated that as my university, as it were, my 4 years. Then I got into business in the hospitality industry in the late 80s, 1988. Ended up selling that business in 2003 with no intention of hanging around for too long, but eventually did, I think, 11 and a half years. And I guess the last sort of 4 or 5 years or so have been more sort of non-executive roles, advisory roles, working with various businesses, one of which is BM. So I've been with you guys 4 years or so now.
It's about that, yeah.
Most of it through COVID. But again, lots of fun, lots of changes, as we know, but a fantastic business with a great soul, which I love.
Yeah, the COVID times were not good. We were always on screens together, so it's quite nice to be in the same room now.
Yeah, we were, and it's amazing how we've all adapted, isn't it? You know, when it first came in, it was like the world had come to an end, wasn't it? But, you know, we are very resilient people, especially in the hospitality industry, incredibly resilient. I think it pulled everybody together in very, very tough times. And look, you know, it seems like a bit of a distant memory now, and on we go.
So a lot of sports people seem to do very well in business afterwards. Why do you think that is? What is it about being in sport and doing well in sport that kind of sets you up? Or is there a link? I'm assuming there is, because it seems quite common.
Yeah, I think there is a link, certainly from my perspective, and I sort of draw a lot of analogies from different personalities, analogy between the boardroom and the dressing room, going back to my, you know, not being great academia and doing a lot of stuff within the sporting world, always in the dressing room from a very young age. And like a boardroom, you know, you have a captain who's your leader or your CEO, you have your coaching team, which might be your non-executives, and then you have a load of sometimes quite disparate individuals. And I think there are lots of analogies between a dressing room, as I say, and the boardroom, that, you know, you have to deal with different personalities and bring the strengths out of those individuals so you all are together and working as one. So I think there are lots of similarities between business and sport. A lot of it is very simplistic. It's communication. It's having a very clear strategy that everybody around the board table and everyone in your business, similar to around the dressing room, buys into. And I think if you look at, certainly I'll take the English cricket team at the moment. You know, cricket is a great love of mine. I think we won 1 test match out of 17 up until about a year ago, and came back from the Caribbean a year ago. Everyone was at a low ebb. And just with a change of personnel and a change of philosophy and strategy have now been, I think we've had a lot of test match, about 12 test matches, with a very simple, clear change of philosophy and strategy that clearly everybody in that dressing room has bought into. And if you then take that to business, and I would hazard to guess, I work with half a dozen or so different businesses, and I sound like a broken record. You've got to bang on about the strategy, having that absolutely agreed and bought into by every stakeholder within your business. So I think there are numerous analogies and similarities between business and sport.
Because the disparate personality made me smile, because our board does have very different personalities, and Angus and I, you know, it's the joint MD with me, famously have different personalities. That's why I think it worked. So I suppose my other question is around having been part of a team in the cricket world. You know, how has that helped you as a leader in terms of, you know, skill set that's migrated, and like you've just given that analogy around the England cricket team and down doing well with that change. Yeah. What did you learn from being a cricketer that you brought?
I think it's interesting. I learned a lot when I wasn't captaining, when I was in the dressing room, but I wasn't a leader. And I had captained sort of age group sides and at school, but that was more what I would say recreational. You then go into a professional cricket environment, which is very much results driven. It's all about today. And actually, when I joined the Middlesex staff in the sort of early mid-80s, they were a very, very successful side. They were winning championships, they were winning one-day cups and everything else. And I went in as an 18-year-old kid, and we had a very famous captain who went on to captain England. But what I did learn as one of the things I learned, rather, actually was, in my view, how not to captain. Quite easy to be a leader when things are going well, and Middlesex was going well. But what wasn't happening, and I've talked to the guys that I shared the dressing room with since I left, there was no real desire to support the youngsters and welcome them into that environment. It was almost as if we were a threat. And I don't believe it's a coincidence when the elder guys retired, Middlesex went through a bit of a void, a performance void, for about a 6-7 year period afterwards. And I do believe that's because the younger individuals there were treated more as a threat rather than a leader embracing. And again, you take that analogy back to business. You are like any team, like any board, you're only as good as your weakest link. And we all need to be managed differently. We all have different personalities. And I'll say his name, Mike Gatting. He's a great friend of mine now. Yeah, I get on very, very well. Hugely successful cricketer, England captain, won the Ashes in 85, 6 in Australia, etc. But Gat did it his way. And his way was about winning today. And that's fine. We get that. But you also have to balance that performance with the future, managing, supporting, and bringing young talent through the business. And I think, within our business, your business, Antony, I think Barlow Mitchell is fantastic, in doing that. We talk about the BM family, but actually we do live and breathe it every day, don't we? We don't treat our colleagues as a threat. We want to, encourage them and promote them and support them. So again, to answer your question directly, I think I've learned more about bad leadership and what I've learned through seeing bad leadership to try and take that into my business life or business lives around. It's about having, a team of people all pulling in the same direction.
And that legacy piece is very important in terms of the responsibility, I suppose, as a leader to share what you know and bring on new talent.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I'm sure it is, Antony. And and if you're a leader, you're a CEO, you're a joint MD in your role, actually the clever ones have better people around them. Whether Steve Jobs was quoted as saying, wasn't he, the clever thing I did was always get cleverer people around me.
Yeah.
So it's embracing that, broad talent pool to sort of benefit the collective good of the business. Because a business is never about one individual. Yes, there might be a front woman, a front man, a front whatever, but it's, so it's around the collective team that are all pulling in the same direction, which is, again, comes back to strategy. And we spend a lot of time talking about strategy within BM, don't we? If you don't have a clear strategy that you communicate out to all of your team members, you probably aren't going to go anywhere fast in a very fast-moving world, which we all live in.
Do you miss, Chris, being a cricketer? Is it a big loss in your life?
I worked around sport when I stopped playing for nearly 30 years, so I sort of kept involved with sport, but more the commercial side of sport.
Yeah.
I don't miss the physical playing of it. I have to tell you that. And I sort of stopped playing club cricket, minor county cricket, sort of reasonably competitive cricket in my mid-30s, family and everything else. And I was also working a lot of weekends in that sort of sport, hospitality side of things. So, but I do miss the dressing room. And, the great buzz of either winning or losing. Winning, clearly the buzz in the dressing room when you won something is euphoric. It's fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. It's like winning a new contract in contract catering. You just get that, that real buzz. So I do miss that. I miss the dressing room, but the physical playing of it. Too old and blind, and my knees hurt.
As well, sadly.
This podcast is powered by BM Caterers. Contacting BM is the easiest way to start your journey to a better workplace experience. Click the link in the description for more info.
Did you see the game change though? Because it used to be, it was a sport of kings, it used to be called, didn't it, at one stage? I'm guessing it became very commercial and continued to do so. Did you see, in your career and since, have you seen a big change?
Yeah, a big change. Yeah, and I'll give you an example. So if you were 12th man for the first 11, and, a huge privilege to be in the home dressing room at Lord's Cricket Ground, which was Middlesex's home ground, where clearly the England players base themselves during Test cricket, one of your duties as 12th man was to do the drinks after the game. And you would go up to the bar in the restaurant and you'd go round at tea time, round the lads, and you'd say, what are you having to drink after the game? And without a word of a lie, in the mid-'80s, the drinks list probably composed of 5 pints of lager, a bottle of red wine, 2 gin and tonics, and a couple of pints of bitter. You now go into any dressing room in any sport and you won't see any alcohol going down straight after. So has the game changed? Yes, the game has changed a lot. I think one of the things that has changed sport broadly, cricket specifically, is Sky Television's investment in sport. We didn't have 2020 cricket when I played all those years ago. I think that has been transformational for world cricket, different audiences, more female watching, more kids watching, fantastic. Because sport survives on sort of main revenue streams, which is media broadcast rights, sponsorship rights, ticketing and hospitality revenue. And sponsors now will want to get involved in sport if it has a very diverse appeal.
Right.
And if you look at the 100, which is our English domestic, it's not actually franchised cricket, but domestic cricket here, which is always in August, the audience, the differentiation now in the audience coming to watch that sport is fantastic. That then appeals to a wider group of sponsors. Because when I was playing, it was tobacco sponsors. They can't sponsor sport anymore.
Not anymore. No.
Alcohol sponsors, they still do, but it's usually around alcohol-free, 0-0, etc., etc. So, but if you have a wide target audience, that's who sponsors want to get hold of. So the game's moved on. It's more professional than it was. Looking back over my hopeless cricketing career for 4 years, it was more fun.
Right.
And I'm not saying they don't have fun now. I think they do have fun, but it's far more professional. For all the right reasons.
More business focused.
Yes, yeah. And I think that, I have to say when I did my 4 years, I sort of knew hand on heart, and this is another reason I'll come back to about leadership, by the way. I never thought I was going to quite make it. Why did I think that? A lot of people were saying, you're talented enough, you've got all the talent. But in sport, professional sport, you can have all the talent in the world, but if mentally you're not quite right, you probably won't go anywhere. And looking back, the Mike Gatting era of Middlesex, a phenomenal era for Middlesex cricket, it was sort of a bit of fear of failure. If you don't score, you're going to be dropped. You're going to be left out. Now, that's one management style, isn't it? Fear, managing by fear is one form of management, which personally I don't buy into. I'm more of a collective, right, come on. It's about glass half full rather than glass half empty. Yeah. It's about encouragement and promoting. But we all have our different styles, Antony. And that was one of them.
A lot of that is back to culture, isn't it, really? It sounds like cricket's changed culturally quite significantly. And how have you taken that sort of knowledge of culture change and things into your business world?
It's a good question. 30-odd years ago when I played, no one ever talked about the word culture, really. And the 70s and 80s, we were in a different world than we are now for lots of reasons, some good, some bad, but, things move on. So culture was never really a word. Team spirit were the words, in a dressing room, that we were all together when we went out on the field of play. I think the reality was then, from what I saw or was part of, we weren't really. There were definite factions within the dressing room, which again, not unique to Middlesex. Surrey were similar to us, our big competitors south of the river. They probably had a more fractured dressing room than Middlesex did. Whereas I think the world has changed and moved on, and culture and everything that goes with that. But it's no longer a word. It is deep-rooted, and I think that all those, equality, diversity, inclusion, ESG, the environment, everything now, businesses do live and breathe those. It's no longer a tick box agenda item. You live and breathe those values. We do within BMs. It's always top of our agendas, but it's not a tick box. And I think that's something that is very, very positive. It's not going to go away, thankfully. I think it's hugely important. But so we were more team spirit than culture. But culture's crucial, isn't it? It's your day-to-day living, it's your day-to-day environment, it's why you get out of bed in the morning. It's like just why you can put your head on your pillow and sleep at night, because you've got things culturally right. And sometimes, and I think one of the things that COVID has probably been good coming out of COVID, because I think those values have been accelerated within business. And I think it's not necessarily, and I hope I don't sound commercially naive here, I think it isn't all just around the bottom line now. There's far more important things that businesses should be doing. And if you get those right, do you know what you'll do? You're going to make some money.
Yeah.
So I think those values, that culture has changed. I think COVID has accelerated that from what I see. I'm sure what we see in our business, Antony, and that's got to be good news. I think there's more awareness now, individually and collectively within the business, around the impact of what we're doing.
I agree, because I think it's always been a part of BM in terms of our culture has always been fundamental to how we make decisions to detract from goals or promises we made to the team and our clients. But I agree with you. I think that was probably the one plus from COVID, if you can find one. It did bring that to the fore a lot more, and it was much more evident. And I think it became more important to certainly our teams, but also our clients as well, because as you know, we're quite strategic in who we work with. We want a partnership approach, and you always look for cultural alignments, to make sure that it's not going to be just about the commerciality.
Yeah. And I think that's key, partnership, we talked about it yesterday, didn't we? It's sort of a bit of an overused word, isn't it? It's an easy thing to say we have a great partnership, but actually partnerships are lived and breathed every day. And again, that comes back to strategic alignment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've all got the same objectives, we've all got the same goals and ambitions, and we'll work together to deliver them. And, when I met Wendy Bartlett years ago, and she asked me whether I'd come on board when I sort of stopped doing normal stuff, I suppose. One of the main attractions was everything that I had heard and seen about the BM family, and it is lived and it's breathed every day, and long may it continue.
And the family aspect is very important. And I think another, I suppose, buzzword trend has been well-being. For employee well-being has been a big part of, I think, our culture for a long time, but it's certainly something now we have to consider when we're attracting new people. I just wondered if that was something you saw in sport back in the day, in terms of, did you feel like you were well looked after as your well-being? When you were thinking about leaving cricket, was there any support? Was there any, you said about the mindset was that you didn't feel like you were going to be a big success in cricket, and that held you back, presumably. Do you think nowadays that would be a different approach for the team and the coaches and the people around you? Would there be more support?
There certainly is now.
Yeah.
From what I see in sports, when I was playing, paid to play professional sport, there was very little support, if anything. It was pretty much a sink or swim mentality. And I know that sounds dreadful, but it's fact. That's sort of how it was. And in those days, it was just the infancy of things like what's now called the Professional Cricketers Association, which looks after all present and past professional cricketers. And they are there to advise, support. Also, it's the benevolent charity of cricket for ex-athletes. But that only literally started, funny enough, PC only started when I played. You have the RPA, the Rugby Players Association now. That didn't exist 35 years ago. So again, as the world has moved on, there is more support around professional athletes. But sadly, when I played, there was nothing. You'd have your mates in the dressing room, and you'd probably console each other in the bar or the hotel the evening after if you'd lost or got naught or whatever it might have been. Outside of that, there was no support structure whatsoever. And as you say, within BM, and I think in business broadly now, there is far more support because as you are, employing 700 odd people now across BM, you have to take those responsibilities very, very seriously and live and breathe those every day. We have a duty of care, and we do within our business, as we take that very seriously.
So I suppose it's that mirrored change in culture in sport and in business, really, because I don't think you've probably got that level of support in the workplace at the time either. It's evolved, I think, over the years.
I think, it has. And when I left and we started our business in the late 80s, our hospitality business, we built it from the bottom up, and we grew. We were never a large organisation. We only had 20-odd employees at our zenith. And we sort of felt our way. And you look back at it now, Antony, you go, oh God, real seat of the pants stuff. And we had no sort of HR support or anything else. So you've had an owner-managed environment for whatever we had it for, 16 years or so. Then went into this huge lumbering animal. And all of a sudden, you've got an HR function, which we never had before. So yes, things have moved on, and thankfully the world has moved on, and we don't treat our employees as numbers, do we? How long may that continue?
I mean, the world moving on has certainly been clear for the last couple of years when it changed beyond belief, and thankfully we're getting back to normal now. The world carries on changing. So what do you think is your big sort of focus area personally for the next year or so? What's your big sort of driver in life or in business?
Well, in the roles that I've fulfill, it's, again, trying to support the businesses. I say non-execs and coaches, I think, is sort of a bit of an analogy between sport and business, business and sport. It's to support the management teams within any of those organizations, very much with an eye on people. However quickly the world evolves in tech and AI and everything else in this fast-moving world, we're a service business, and it's about people. Now, we might, not have people on a till in 9 months' time, a year's time, because of all the automation and technology advancements and everything else. But I think as soon as we lose sight of people in any industry, broadly, that I'm involved with anyway, Antony, I think it's almost the beginning of the end. Now, we have to find a balance, of course we do, so we need to embrace technology and everything that goes with that. But as I said before, one of the great attractions around BM, as an example, is that it is very, very much a people-focused business, and long may that continue. So I'm sort of sounding a bit political, but to answer your question, strategy, keep banging on about strategy and making sure that everyone understands the strategy of the businesses that I'm sort of involved with, and people. I think it's fundamental. If you get that right, you'll work out how to make money.
Thank you, Neil, for your time today.
Not at all.
Thank you for sharing your sort of correlations, I suppose, really, between sport and business.
A load of waffle, really.
No, it's not. No. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.